folks, Rob Dreemeyer here. Welcome to Broadway Barfly.
If you're a theater fan who loves a great cocktail, click that subscribe button because Broadway Barfly is the channel for you.
Maureen Dallas Watkins was an American playwright who started her career as a reporter at the Chicago Tribune. While she was there, she was assigned the courthouse beat, and she covered several high-profile trials of the day. Two of the trials she covered were the trials of Belva Gardner and Beulah Anand, two women who were each accused of murdering their respective lovers. Watkins had a very popular writing style. She referred to these accused women as jazz babies who were corrupted by men and liquor. And Watkins' reporting became very popular. And as her popularity grew, so did the public's sympathy and support for these accused women. And both were eventually acquitted by their juries. A few years later, Watkins referred back to her reporting as inspiration for her play Chicago about women standing trial for murder. She based her characters Velma Kelly and Roxie Hart on Gardner and Anand. When the play opened on Broadway in 1926, it was a success, and there were two film versions made of it. One was a 1927 silent film produced by Cecil B. DeMille, and the other was a 1942 film titled Roxie Hart that starred Ginger Rogers. Several years after that, the Broadway star Gwen Verdon read the play, and she felt it would make a good musical vehicle for her to star in. Her husband, the director and choreographer Bob Fosse, agreed, and they approached Watkins for the rights, but she had no interest in having her play made into a musical. Throughout the 1960s, Verdon and Fosse continued to make appeals to Watkins, hoping to change her mind, but they were always rejected. After she died in 1969, the executor of her estate eventually did make a deal with Fosse and Verdon so that they could have the rights. Her heirs suggested that she had been withholding the rights all of those years out of perhaps a sense of guilt. She believed Beulah Anand was guilty, and over the years it started to disturb her that perhaps her reporting somehow contributed to her acquittal, and she was no longer interested in any further glorification of a murderer. After waiting many years to acquire the rights, it still took several years for Fosse and Verdon to get Chicago open on Broadway, namely because Fosse kept prioritizing other projects and then had a heart attack which put him out of commission for a bit. Chicago's road to Broadway was actually plagued by all sorts of backstage drama, but luckily for us it's well documented, most recently in the FX miniseries Fosse-Verdon, and also in the 1979 film All That Jazz, which is largely based on Bob Fosse's life during this period where they were preparing Chicago for Broadway. Chicago finally opened on Broadway in June of 1975. Fosse, of course, directed and choreographed. John Kander and Fred Ebb wrote the score. Gwen Verdon starred as Roxie Hart. Chita Rivera played Velma Kelly. And Jerry Orbach played the smarmy defense attorney Billy Flynn. The show received only mixed reviews, but it did manage to run a little bit over 2 years. Some people felt that the show's dark and cynical tone just didn't resonate with audiences of the day, but it's just as likely that the show's success was somewhat mitigated by bad timing, because less than 2 months after Chicago opened on Broadway, A Chorus Line arrived. And A Chorus Line was a juggernaut of a hit that pretty much eclipsed everything else that was happening on Broadway that season. If the original Broadway production of Chicago suffered from bad timing, the Broadway revival of Chicago benefited immensely from very good timing. In 1996, Chicago was presented as part of City Center's Encore series, where they present underappreciated musicals in concert-like stagings. Well, the media in the mid-1990s was saturated with news of high-profile trials, most notably the O.J. Simpson trial. And so all of a sudden, Chicago had a very newfound relevance that resonated deeply with audiences of that day. The presentation was so successful that it was moved to Broadway with only limited augmentations, and the success of the revival was beyond anybody's wildest imagination. And it still runs on Broadway today and holds the record for the second longest running musical in Broadway history, second only to Phantom of the Opera. The success of the revival was largely responsible for a film version of the musical being made. Even after the original Broadway production, there was always gossip of a film being made, perhaps one that would have starred Bette Midler and Liza Minnelli, but that never materialized. However, after the success of the revival, a film version was made that starred Renee Zellwegger and Catherine Zeta-Jones, and of course that film went on to win the Oscar for Best Picture that year. So to celebrate the success of Chicago, we're going to make a Chicago cocktail. The Chicago cocktail dates back to at least 1930 and probably many years prior to that. It was first found in print in 1930 in Harry Craddock's Savoy cocktail book. In 1931, a Chicago restaurant critic also wrote about the cocktail, saying that it was not only served in Chicago and London, but also in Nice. So while Chicago is the cocktail's namesake, there's no real evidence that it's also its place of origin. The drink is sort of a hybrid between a sidecar and a champagne cocktail, two drinks that were very popular in the earliest part of the 20th century. And there are several varieties of the Chicago cocktail, and so it's possible that any one of these variations could have emerged from any number of places. There is, however, one important Chicago connection worth mentioning because it's said to have been a favorite drink of one of Chicago's most famous, or rather infamous, citizens. It's said to have been a favorite drink of Al Capone. And while the Chicago is a brandy-based cocktail, it's said that Capone would substitute the brandy for whiskey in his version. Regardless of the cocktail's origins, it was a very popular drink in its day and almost assuredly enjoyed by many jazz babies of the era. To make our Chicago cocktail, we need brandy, Cointreau, bitters, champagne, and also some lemon juice and some sugar. So we start with a mixing glass of ice, and yes, we're using our new mixing glass, and we add 2 ounces of the brandy. We add about 3/4 of an ounce of the Cointreau, and then a couple dashes of the bitters. And we give that a good stir. Now we're going to serve this in a cocktail glass with a sugared rim. Who doesn't love a sugared rim? We moisten the lip of the glass with some lemon juice, and then we dip it in some sugar. Then we're going to strain our drink into the glass. And we're going to top it off with some champagne. We'll garnish that with a peel of lemon, and there you have a Chicago cocktail. Cheers.
If you enjoyed the video, why not give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends? Feel free to leave your comments and click that subscribe button because there's a lot more Broadway Barfly to come.